My Adventures with Superman Season 2 was back again this week with an all-new episode entitled Full Metal Scientist. Now, I'm Gabe Joel, and this is the video series where I give my thoughts and feelings on the episode that was, while also shouting out any comic book Easter eggs or references I can find. And oh man, was there a lot of them this week, so let's not waste any time. Starting off hot this week, quite literally, Superman saves a man from a house fire by activating a brand new power for the season. I get the feeling this one's gonna confuse a lot of people. I'm of course talking about Superman's super aura. In the comics, this is sometimes described as being a bioelectrical aura or even a tactile telekinetic aura, depending on what era we're in or who's doing the writing. It honestly doesn't come up that much anymore in modern comics, and if it does, it's usually meant as a hand-wavy explanation as to how Superman can fly at supersonic speeds with fragile items or regular people without absolutely turning them into shreds. I guess after all the focus the classic Superman powers got in Season 1, they decided to dig a little deeper into Superman's bag of tricks for Season 2. I do have to wonder if we're gonna see newer stuff like the solar flare or even flying around the Earth so fast Superman can travel in time like the Donner movies. Now, as it turns out, the guy that Superman saved isn't just any regular old dude, it's actually Dr. Silas Stone, who longtime comic readers will know is actually the father of future Titan Victor Stone, aka Cyborg. Hey, how about that? Only 3 episodes into Season 2 and we're already seeing a larger DC universe with other heroes starting to take shape. It seems that Silas was working on a top secret science project that ended up ruffling all the wrong feathers, as now he has Livewire leaning on him to delete all his findings. Why she even threatens his son, who we learn is not quite a teen yet. Oh, but the references don't stop there either, as it seems that with Ivotech off the table, a ton of different outfits are looking to fill their super science void. Last time it was Star Labs, and this week's it's Ameritech. Silas was working for them, but he wasn't the only one, as his partner is revealed to be none other than Dr. John Henry Irons, or as he is better known in the comics, Steel. Steel, in case you didn't know, actually has a really long and really interesting history in the Superman stories. You see, after Clark died in the landmark Death of Superman storyline, Irons was one of several people who rose up and tried to fill the void. He built his own high-tech suit modeled after Superman, and even when the Man of Steel returned, John stuck around and has been a regular DC cast member ever since. Hell, those early Louise Simonson stories are actually super underrated and totally worth revisiting. Also, Jesus, I stop and think about it, we get Steel this week, we got Hank Henshaw last week, all we're missing is the Eradicator and the Metropolis Kid, and we'll have an entire reunion of the reign of the Superman. And why yes, Irons is indeed the Full Metal Scientist of the title, a fun little reference to the famous anime manga Full Metal Alchemist, because this is My Adventures with Superman, a show that wears its anime influences proudly on its sleeve. Now, over with Clark and Jimmy, they're trying to make do with hosting General Sam Lane. He's morose after having to go on the run, and he's starting to see enemies all over the place. Of course, despite his paranoia, he's still hilariously not able to clue into the fact that Clark and Superman are the same person. Though, in a fun bit of characterization, the reason for that seems to be that Sam sees Clark as a flake, someone who's flighty and unreliable, someone who couldn't possibly be a hero, but someone who might just end up breaking his daughter's heart if he's not careful. In fact, this kind of sets up Clark's journey for the rest of the episode, as he's forced to balance being Superman, being Lois's loving boyfriend, while also still trying to get his own work done as a journalist, despite him having zero actual idea about what he should write. Speaking of writing, and Lois has been sent to cover Ameritech's big announcement for the city. It's here we meet the company's CEO, a guy named Weston, who in the books was much more of a paint-by-numbers general type, so it's fun to see him here reinvented as an over-the-top corporate hype man. Now, what exactly is Ameritech selling? Well, just a fleet of brand new robotic peacekeepers called, get this, Metallos. This actually ends up being a major departure from the comics, as Metallo was the supervillain moniker used by John Corbin. Funny how in a series where so many Superman villains are mercenaries with cyborg parts, we don't actually get the original Superman cyborg. And honestly, I think I can understand why. I always liked Corbin in the books, but outside of having a very cool Terminator-style look, he was never actually the most interesting or deep character, and because we already have villains like Atomic Skull and Damage who are more or less living Corbin's gimmick, I guess it was only right to do a little change. Hell, you know what? I'll freely admit it, in the trailer lead up to Season 2, I actually thought Damage was Metallo. This episode is also notable for seeing the return of Vicki Vale as Lois and the Planet's news rival. I gotta say, I love the energy she brings to the series. In the comics, Lois rarely rarely, if ever, finds a challenge when it comes to breaking news, so to have her go up against a woman who is such a force of nature, who very literally towers over her, it's just a cool dynamic. Lois and Vicki end up learning pretty damn quickly that Weston is hiding some deep dark secret regarding the Metallos, and they both rush to be the first to break the story. This means that seemingly all of these unrelated plot threads we've been following all episode long are all going to dovetail at the home of John Henry. This also includes Jimmy and Flip, who are going through a whole C-plot about Jimmy trying his hardest to be a boss, but finding it hard to actually manage people. In another nice reference, Flamebird was actually brought to John Henry at the behest of his niece, Natasha Irons, who, you guessed it, in the comics also becomes Steel. Turns out she's a Flamebird fan. As John eventually explains, him and Silas had wanted to try and help the city with his brand new Steel suit tech, basically special exosuits for first responders, but Weston, being the corrupt Silicon Valley D-bag that he is, wanted nothing more than to make something cheaper and flashier, so a drone army it was. Too bad for everyone, the drone's power source, Armor Tech Fusion, has a bad habit of blowing up, and when Silas and Irons threatened to go public, Weston hired Livewire to go after them and shut them up. Luckily, Superman is here now to protect John from Livewire, but when his back is against the wall, Weston decides to go full scorched earth by turning on his army of Metallo robots. Even though doing so very well ends up risking the entire city. This means Superman and Steel must team up in order to stop the robots before the fusion tower can explode. Gotta say, I like what they do with the Steel suit here. It's very different from the comics, but in a fun way. It gives me a real Armored Core Zone of the Enders sort of vibe. Also, while we're on the subject, hats off to this John Henry design too. I like that he's a big barrel-chested, beefy dude, and I'm not just saying that because I'm one myself. He cuts a unique silhouette, and it goes to show that heroes come in all sizes in this universe. Much like in last week's episode, Jimmy and Flip end up coming in really clutch, making use of the mobile news team helicopter to blind the Metallos and give Superman a chance to contain the blast before anyone is hurt. Lois beats Vicki to the punch with her story, and Vale is so impressed she offers Lois a job to go to Gotham on the spot. Lois tries to tell Superman the news, but he's still dealing with the fact that he was pulled in so many directions today. He was literally the last person to figure out what was going on, and it could have cost everyone everything. This also means between Lois's new job offer and Superman using the key to try and find his cousin, they're both kind of keeping secrets from each other right now, which is not healthy for any relationship. If nothing else though, by the end of the episode, we see Clark the journalist finally starting to develop. He's building his own voice as a writer, mainly talking about his love for his friends, his community, and even putting over Steel himself as the real true hero of the day. It probably would have been a very happy ending too, were it not for the last few minutes as Lex Luthor reveals that he's swooped on in to gobble up everything that the now defunct Ameritech has left behind, including John Henry's own suit. And knowing Lex, it's probably only a matter of time before he ends up spray painting that thing green and purple. And so that was Full Metal Scientist, everyone, and once again I thought My Adventures with Superman offered up a really solid episode, one that combined a ton of really amazing comic book Easter eggs and references, some solid action built around Superman mastering a brand new power, growing the cast of characters, as well as setting up a ton of new hurdles for our heroes to need to clear both in their personal lives and in their super lives. And that'll just about do it for me, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, if you did, be sure to like, subscribe, and favorite. Follow me on social media so you always know when a new video is coming down the pipeline. And until next time, this has been Cave Joel, thanking you so much for watching. Bye-bye.